Welcome to the channel, guys. We are back again for another fragrance review, and today I'm going to be talking about Soleil Matin by Navitus Parfums, so stay tuned for that. If you like top 10 lists, cologne comparisons, fragrance reviews, and first impressions, hit that subscribe button for more great content. So Soleil Matin is the second of the two fragrances released by Chaos in conjunction with Navitus. I did talk about Rive Nuit, so I did do a full review on that one if you want to check that one out. Today I am going to talk about Soleil Matin. I'm going to make some comparisons with Rive Nuit just because I think it's constructive when thinking about the whole set and what Chaos has done. But, you know, without any further ado, let's get into it. So, this is a fresh fragrance. Now, I will say just quickly that Rive Nuit does certainly open up fresh, but this is a freshie through and through. This is exactly what you expect from a freshie, or it gives off that impression. So this is definitely something that has that citrus brightness and has a very fresh element about it. Now, there is a lot of different citruses in the opening. I will say a few of them do stand out to me. I definitely get the mandarin, so I do get a bit of an orangish vibe at times, although I find that often they blend together, but every once in a while I do pick out a little bit more of one of the citruses, and that one would definitely be mandarin. I do also get grapefruit, and I do like that because the grapefruit comes off as slightly tart. Now, it's not particularly tart, it's not really tart, and you know, I do love fragrances that are tart, so it does have a little bit of that aspect of that vibe to sort of suit my personal taste. Although, as I've said with other fragrances, I actually would prefer this to be a little bit more tart. Nonetheless, it is actually nice. Now, there is, I believe, lemon and lime. I don't really pick those up individually. I do sometimes get something that maybe feels like lime, but I don't really pick it up, and same with the lemon. I find that often it's a very nice blend, but some of those citrus elements definitely pop. And of course, as I mentioned, I like when the grapefruit pops because it does have a little bit of that tartness. Now, I believe there's some spices in this. I don't really get a lot of spice. This is not really a fresh, spicy fragrance in any real respect. What I do get is this really nice, bright, very light composition. So another thing about this, especially on the opening, I think this is definitely a fragrance that is going to be very, very mass appealing. Mass appealing because it's not thick, it has substance, and you know what? It's not too dense for a lot of people. It's very simple and uplifting fragrance. So it does have that sort of bright, mass appealing, freshy kind of a vibe. Now, there is a slight sweetness, although I don't really get a ton of it. I will say it is slightly sweet, especially in the opening with the citrus vibe. But there is also a greenness. Now, when this definitely opens up, it is mostly citrus, but especially as this gets into like the first hour or so, the citruses do tone down a little bit. They're still the main player for quite some time, but I find that there's an underpinning of a green vibe that definitely starts to come to the forefront. And in fact, at times, especially in the sort of, I guess, the mid, if you want to call it that, I do get a little bit of a bluish vibe. Not like aquatic, but almost like a very fresh, clean, not quite shower gel, but almost, in some vague way, it reminds me of like Bleu de Chanel, but it doesn't smell like Bleu de Chanel. But there is that sort of blue quality to it in the mid, mixed in with that greenness and that freshness. Now, the blue aspect of this fragrance certainly doesn't overtake, and it's not actually something that I found very long-lived. It is just something that did take a little, that was there for a little while, and then what happened is it gave way to a very light, airy, yet it's hard to say is dense because it's not dense, but very robust greenness. And the greenness, again, it just smelled maybe like a dewy leaf is the best way to maybe describe it. And I will say that it did remind me of some other fragrances in this respect. So it does have a very similar sort of green, fresh, airy, or light-hearted vibe that other fragrances have. And although this didn't really directly remind me of Neo, I think it does have some similarities. It's definitely not as tart. But that green vibe that it has, this also has it. And I do think there's other fragrances that I've smelled that definitely have a similar green vibe to it. Now, that being said, it is very nice. The quality is very good, and it's definitely there. I actually went through a lot of this. This wasn't because this one leaked. Some of the samples that I got did leak. I did go through this one several times because I found, especially the first few times I tried this on skin, it did not wear very well on my skin. And I tried it on paper, and I got a much better feel of what it, I guess, is supposed to smell like. And I found it to be quite enjoyable, so I did try it a few more times on the skin, and recently, after a couple of wearings, it did start to be a little bit more like it is on paper on my skin. You know, the first few times I wore it, I got more of like, it kind of fizzled out into like this sort of almost soapy, a little bit fresh, and it felt a little bit woody or something like that, which was definitely not something I was feeling. And that's one of the reasons why it took me a while to do this review and why I went through so much of this. But I will say that as I wore it a few more times, I'm not entirely sure. I definitely find this happens sometimes. It started to wear a little bit differently on my skin. And I've tried it a couple times where it's worn better. And I will say that I do definitely like it more after having given it that chance to maybe mature or develop or whatever. It was only the course over a couple of weeks. But nonetheless, I'm happy I did that. So I would say that's one thing to be aware of. But like I said, it has this really nice, fresh vibe, very citrusy, very bright, tones down into sort of a bluish and then a greenish vibe. You know, in the dry down and everything like that, I don't find it particularly sweet. So I wouldn't call this a sweet fragrance. And again, I don't really pick up a lot of the spices. It is a somewhat one-dimensional fragrance. I know I've described it as changing quite a bit, but those changes all happen in a relatively short period of time, and then it sits at that sort of light, fresh green vibe that it has. And it is nice in that respect. So it's not complex, which is another reason why I think that it is something that has a lot of mass appeal to it, because it is, it's easy to digest and it's easy to understand. But, unlike Rive Nuit, I find this one to be a lot less unique, a lot less creative, and a lot less original. I actually did find Rive Nuit to be really quite nice. It had a lot more of a robust character. It stood out a lot more. And I felt like it was much more unique and creative. This is really well crafted, but at the same time, I don't feel like it does anything particularly special. Now, if you don't have this kind of fragrance in your collection and you're looking for something that's just an easy to wear freshie, this is definitely a good option, I think. But if it doesn't, if it doesn't fill something that is missing, I don't think it stands out enough in that respect to really go out and get it. And of course, you should sample it because, like I said, it is really nice and it's definitely worth trying. And of course, everybody has a different opinion and a different nose, so you always want to find out what is best for you. But just for me personally, I think Rive Nuit is much better. And in fact, I think that's, that one did actually wow me a little bit, especially as I gave it a few more wearings, whereas this one just comes off as very nice. So to me, this is a very versatile fragrance, spring, summer, very easy to wear, very likable. And I think it's probably more easy to like than Rive Nuit, even though that one's also really well crafted. And I think also fairly easy to like. But this is one that I cannot see somebody disliking this fragrance profile. I don't know if people are going to necessarily be blown away by it. I think a lot of people that don't smell tons of fragrances are probably really going to think this is great. But again, at the same time, just be aware, in my opinion anyways, what kind of it brings to the table. But again, casual wear, excellent for that. I think it's great for those casual occasions, great for going out, great for, the daytime heat. I think this is one, especially because there is one thing I will say about this fragrance that I found really nice, is it does have a bit of a cooling effect. So there's something in that sort of light airiness that just makes you feel chilled. And so, especially when it comes to like a hot day or something like that, I think potentially this one could really do well. So it's always hard to, you know, judge a freshie during the middle of, you know, the winter. And I wouldn't mind coming back to this in spring or on a warmer day and giving it a wearing, as I probably have enough for 1, maybe 2 wearings here. And seeing what it's all about and seeing exactly how it does in what I think is the situation or environment that it would work best. But like I said, very easy to wear, likable fragrance. If I was to pick this or Rive Nuit, I would go with Rive Nuit because that one's actually, in my opinion, definitely stands out more and has more uniqueness, where this one is very well crafted, very well blended, and very likable. It doesn't really go that extra step to make it something that really stands out. But you know what? That is just my opinion. As always, you should get your nose on it and see what you think about it. Have you tried anything from Chaos Fragrances, released from Navitus? Let me know in the comments down below. And as always, don't forget to hit that like and subscribe button, and I'll see you guys in the next video.